I would ask that our staff call the roll, please, to determine whether or not a quorum is present.
Mr. Flacco.
Present.
Mr. Stamnes.
Here.
Ms. Jared.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Borboom.
Here.
Ms. White. Mr.
Here.
Gust. Mr. Breitling.
Yes,
Ms. Majo. Ms. Turnberg.
Here.
And Mr. Zimmerman.
Here.
Quorum is present.
thank you. First of all, I have an announcement to make because there are people in the staff, in the meeting who may want to speak. And that is today's meeting is being recorded. And the public is directed to speak at the podium to my left and into the microphone and to identify themselves by name and address. That way we can accurately record whatever you have to say. Please speak into the mic so that material is transcribed accurately. The next item of business is the approval of the minutes from February 26, 25. Is there a motion to approve as printed?
Borboom motions that.
Is there a second?
Zimmerman, second.
Is there any further questions or discussion concerning the content of those minutes? Hearing none, this would only require a voice vote, and I'm asking that we now move to approve the minutes as printed. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The chair will rule the motion carried. The next order is the approval order of agenda, and I have a request that I'm asking the committee to make, and that's that to take item 4 as item 6 and items 5 and 6 as 4 and 5. That way we can get rid of the mundane administrative matters and move on to the item that's been moved down from 4. Is there a motion that the agenda be amended in that regard?
Flacco moves the motion as suggested amendment by the chair.
Is there a second? Mr. Gust has seconded the motion. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, I would ask that this is also a voice vote. All of those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. The next item of business to be considered is the OIN 1899 sale of excess land recommendation by Eric Dodds. Eric, would you make a presentation for us?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, committee members. In your packet, starting on page 32, is an excess land recommendation memo for OIN 1899. The recommendation follows suit with many that you've seen before you at previous meetings. OIN 1899 is a former rural residential and business property in the upstream mitigation area, approximately 52 acres. It sits along the Red River, a largely forested land that's in mitigation zone 1. So all of the buildings that were on this site have since been removed and the flowage easement has been secured. The flowage easement also restricts any future development on this parcel. But as you can see, it's along the river, and there may be some interest from parties that want to use it for hunting land or other recreation purposes. So we're asking that the committee declare this as excess. The memo identified the recommended price per acre, and recommended sale price. Scroll back to that in my hard copy here. Recommended sale price of $275,000, which again is based on about $5,300 per acre. That's roughly the price we've seen for other lands of this nature. I do acknowledge that this is a little bit larger site than many of the other ones, so that ends up being a little bit higher dollar amount than some of the other small parcels, of course. No other specific comments there, other than just, again, confirming that when we do sell this, following the policy, we will attach the flowage easement, reserve that, so we have all those rights needed for operation of the project. Stand for any questions.
Hearing no questions, is there a recommendation that the request of our technical staff be granted?
I'd move to approve the
Mr.
recommended
Brightly, and I'll
motion.
make that motion.
Excuse me, you were commenting?
I would make the motion to approve the, I
We
would
have a
make the,
motion and a second. Is there any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. Would
Mr.
you
Flacco.
please?
Aye.
Mr. Stamnes,
Yes.
Ms. Derrick,
yes.
Mr. Borboom,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mr. Brightling. Mr.
Yes.
Brightling, Ms. Majo,
Yes.
Ms. Turnberg,
Yes.
and Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
That is everyone.
The chair will rule that the motion is carried. The next item of business is old item 6, which is now 5, Piper's auction and realty service, public sale of excess lands. And again, I would ask Mr. Dodds to present this item to the committee.
Yes, so this is a recommendation. Technically, this is not an action item, excuse me. It is a item for information. Our excess land policy, as you may recall, has several steps. First, we have to first we declare the land excess, then we offer it to the member entities. Then we offer the land to the former owner, and then the adjacent owners, and then public sale. We've had, I believe, 10 parcels that have gone through this process and reached the public sale standpoint, and about half of those have actually had an open buyer. To date, we've just put them up for sale on the website, and word of mouth has generated some sales that way. There are still a number of parcels currently that have not sold at that public sales step, and in the future, there may be more that come forward. We did anticipate this when the excess land policy was approved back several years ago. And so in doing that, Pfeiffer's has been under contract to help with property management, mostly farmland leases, for a number of years. Pfeiffer's also has an auction realty service. And so years ago, when we hired Pfeiffer's, it was intentional that we included auction and realty services in their master services agreement. And so now that some time has gone on and we have a handful of parcels that are in that public sale step that haven't really moved forward, we believe it's time to engage Pfeiffer's to ask them to auction off some of these parcels that we have sitting around. So we've coordinated with Pfeiffer's. In the packet here, you saw a proposal that Pfeiffer's had put forward where they will help market the parcels and eventually lead to an auction. There are some, nuances, of course, with retainer fees and marketing costs and marketing strategies that Pfeiffer's will help us with. I guess from a staff standpoint, we feel pretty comfortable with this. We feel like this is a proposal that aligns with what's in their contract. And so wanted to bring it forward here more for awareness and just to make sure there weren't any major objections to moving down this path.
The request, as I understand it, is to authorize our technical staff to work with Piper's auction on the properties that are still to be sold that have been fit into the excess lands policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I guess we feel like the contract and the prior engagement of Pfeiffer's aligns with this, so I don't know that there's necessarily any action needed for the committee, but again, wanted to bring it here for awareness sake.
Mr. Chairman, I think in this case, when in doubt, make a motion.
Thank
So I
you.
would move the approval of the recommendation.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions or comments that wish to be made at this time? Hearing none, this would also require a roll call vote. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Flacco,
Aye.
Mr. Stamnis,
Yes.
Ms. Derrick,
Yes.
Mr. Borboom,
Yes.
Ms. White,
Yes.
Mr. Gust,
Yes.
Mr. Brightling,
Yes.
Ms. Majo,
yes,
Ms. Turnberg,
Yes.
and Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. The chair will rule the motion is carried. The next item of business is the matter of OINs 7234B, C, and D, sale of excess lands. The recommendation has been made by the technical staff. At the last meeting in February of this committee, the motion was made to defer this matter to allow the property owners the ability to meet and hear the Diversion Authority Director explain the process. That meeting has taken place, and in attendance was Mr. Benson, and one of the one of the board members of this committee via telephone, Mr. Gust. I'm going to ask at this time that our director, Mr. Benson, provide us with a report as to that meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Several weeks ago, I had the opportunity. It wasn't a meeting put on by the Diversion Authority. It was a local homeowners group that met to discuss their concerns and their desire to have the opportunity to acquire the parcels of land along the railroad tracks for their use. And in the process, because we have not yet deemed these lands as excess lands, we haven't started to inquire. We hadn't started at that point to inquire with individual landowners, but obviously they were aware, especially as some of the other parcels along the railroad tracks further to the south had been already sold to other landowners in the Horace area. And I know today we've got several of the members from the fire department, the rural fire department there, and landowners. So in the meeting, there was about 20 different people. I didn't get the full number, probably about 12 to 15 homeowners. You know, there were some couples that were representing just one parcel. And a lot of interest in being, at least having the opportunity to acquire the parcel that was adjacent to that. A common theme was there was interest. In some cases, people have taken care of that land adjacent to the railroad tracks. Even though it was railroad land, they've been mowing it for 10, 15, 20 or more years, depending on how long they've lived there. So they feel that they'd like that opportunity. And I also let them know, and as was brought up, Mr. Gust, I had him on the cell phone so he could listen in on the meeting and hear. But I informed them that one of the challenges with that area is if we don't have 100% of the landowners acquiring the property, and we have independent lots that are still owned by the Diversion Authority, that's problematic to the Diversion Authority from a maintenance standpoint. We're going to have an easement through the backyards of people's, along this corridor to be able to access those independent small little parcels for us to get people to mow and maintain those. And so they're very aware that it is, basically an all or nothing, and that if we're not able to come to an agreement with those landowners, that we would move to the next step, which would then be to work with the city. And the city has reached out and continues to state their desire to have an easement along that corridor for a sanitary sewer, and if their desire would be to just have the opportunity to purchase. And so with that, those are my comments. If anyone's got any question, Mr. questions, Mr. Chair, I'm open.
Are there any members of the committee who have any questions of Mr. Benson? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Say, Mr. Benson, I have a question about, was the offer beyond just the adjacent landowners to, I guess, the neighbor's property too, as in, if the neighbor doesn't want to buy the property and the adjacent owner already selected to possibly or show interest in their property right next to them, could they buy their neighbor's property? As in, the reason I asked, maybe someone wants to put a boat back there, or maybe they want to put a
Yeah.
small shed.
Right, thanks. Great question. So I did bring that up. It was a comment that was brought up, and depending on the lot, what I informed the landowners was, I'm not aware of all the rules and regulations within Horace's planning code and what can be zoned. So say, the lot immediately adjacent to theirs is for sale and they buy that, but their neighbor doesn't want, or maybe 2 or 3 neighbors don't want to buy theirs, so they buy this L shape, and so now their parcel's an L shape. Is that a legal lot in Horace? I'm not going to dig into Horace's zoning and subdivision ordinance and make a decision on that. That's something that those landowners have to discuss. Something that might be easier is if the adjacent lot next to them, they purchase it, now right across the railroad tracks, that next lot, that person doesn't want it, so it'd be more contiguous and, look more like a standard rectangular lot. That might be more acceptable, but, it might be an option, but it just depends on Horace's land use and zoning authorities and regulation.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Mr. Benson? Yes, ma'am.
Is there a preferred method of sale? Do you prefer the landowners to purchase, or is it preferred that the city have it so it can be maintained by the city?
Yeah, thank you. I think ultimately it would be much easier to have one owner, that we make a purchase to one owner and not multiple. So from that standpoint of, staff time and ease of the acquisition process, that would be easier to just sell the Horace. But our policy does state that it first goes to the adjacent landowners. So that's where we're kind of in that conundrum.
Are there any other questions from the committee members?
Chair Brightling, I have my hand up.
Thank you. Please, White?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, since this is a former rail bed, has there been any discussion of possible soil contamination? And if so, any liability issues? I don't know if there would be any sort of indemnification or something like that.
Yeah, Eric Dodds here. I can respond to that. So, yes, there has been investigations on environmental contamination of the site, and the Diversion Authority will be responsible for mitigating that environmental contamination on this segment as well as other segments that we're working on selling. So we've been working with the Department of Environmental Quality in North Dakota to develop a mitigation approach for that soil contamination. The Diversion Authority and the technical consulting team are working on a bid package to hire a contractor to do that work. Anticipate that that'll probably be done in a couple phases this year, and anticipate this area to be cleaned up hopefully later this year. I'm looking at Chris for confirmation. Yes, later this year.
Did that response answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee members? Hearing none, I would call those in attendance from the public to want to speak to this board and make a presentation, but I remind you that you do so at the podium to my left.
Good afternoon, committee. My name's Anthony Krenzel. I live at 501 Main Street in Horace, right next to the fire station, right off the 7234B section. Yep, they're pointing to it up there. So I guess what I'm looking for is I would like to purchase the land that's directly adjacent to my property. Like they've said before, we've been maintaining it, but not only that, it just, I want to add it to my lot to make my lot a little bit bigger, just to kind of give it a nice big lot, good feeling. Also helps me understand or keep control of what's going to happen behind me. With what the city was talking about doing, we're not really sure. They haven't been super clear on their intentions with that land. There's been talks of a road, a park, a street. You know, it's like anybody else. You don't want to have something just pop up right behind your house when you've been living there for over 12 years with nothing there and you've been maintaining it. My biggest ask of you as a committee is give us, the landowners, the option to negotiate, talk, look through everything, lay out a plan of purchase, price, all that stuff, and just to be fair with everybody. The land south of us has already been sold to the homeowners for 50 cents a square foot. You know, we're just asking for that equal right that they got. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but I'm certainly willing to answer anything I can.
Are there any questions from the committee members? Mr. Gus?
Do you feel that process is taking your wishes into consideration at this point?
Up to this point, no, we haven't had barely any communication from anybody about what's going on with the property. Basically, I've been following it since I bought my house. I was in talks with the elevator and railroad prior to them selling to the Diversion. I've been in contact with the Diversion for, I think, almost 2 years on just trying to acquire what's going on with that. I know a lot of the homeowners that I spoke to they had no idea it was even going up for sale. We know the city put an offer in on it already. And the city's pushing for a 50-foot wide easement through there, which to me is astronomical for an easement. It basically makes that land useless if you buy it, but that's all stuff that I feel can be talked about. But I think we need to have a seat at the table as landowners to discuss what's happening with the property behind our houses.
Thank you. Did you have any other comments to make?
No, not at this point. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to be heard?
Hi, good afternoon. Chris Mahoney, representing Southern Valley Fire and Rescue. Our address is 413 Main Street, right next door to TJ. We are highly interested in that lot adjacent to us. We already have easements that run behind our firehouse. The purpose for that property for us is so we can expand as the population, everything down there is booming. We're gonna need added facilities, and that extra property would help us expand those resources instead of having to look for new property or, you know, build new stations and waste time. But with those easements or those lines already right behind our station, that's why we're so close to Main Street right now at the front of our building, is because that was the only place that we could put it. But yeah, like TJ said, it was talks a couple years ago, and then it kind of fizzled out, and then we started picking up on a lot of this stuff. But that's why we're interested in a lot of this, and we've already had talks with the adjacent neighbors and everybody in that 7234B section. There's 5 of us that are the adjacent property owners, and we've all talked, and we're all interested in it. Everybody in that meeting that was there a couple weeks ago, we were missing a few homeowners, but I believe you all received a signed letter that had everybody on it that missed the meeting. So I think the interest in everything is there, but from our perspective, I mean, it would greatly help us expand as the population grows and we can provide better services. So, anybody have any questions?
Any questions of this witness?
No? Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard?
Afternoon. I am Chatterness. It's 505 West River Road, but we own the Cheyenne Trailer Court. I'm the son-in-law to the owner, Donald Freed. And so our back half is the 7234B also, just south of TJ's house and south of the fire hall. And we want that land, not in a sense to expand anything, you know, possibly in the future, we possibly could if we own that land, but we're private property, we're ran by the state, and we use that to push our snow, you know, to make it open for the fire hall to come in there, the ambulance, all the crews. It'd just be nice to have it so we can keep the snow going back to the west, because we have no place to put it. You know, the city doesn't maintain it for us. We have to take care of that all on our own, and it comes out of our pocket. So it'd be nice to have that land so we can just level it off, make it nice back there. You know, I mean, we've been taking care of it since, I mean, there's a ditch that runs there. I mean, it's mosquito heaven in the springtime because it doesn't drain, obviously. But it's nice to have it. It would be really nice to have that little chunk back there, you know. And I know there's a lot of people that never made it in here to voice their opinion, but they were at the meeting when we had it. And I mean, there's a lot of interest in this. And if it goes to the city, and let's say they put a road there, well, you have another road going behind your property? And come on, no. And an easement, I mean, are we going to be able to push snow on there? Do we have to pay more money to haul snow out? You know, that's really all I have to say about it. It'd be nice to have it.
Thank you. Are there any questions of this witness?
Thank you.
I don't want to cut anybody off. Are there others who wish to be heard?
Down in the corner in the Willow Court area. My name's Todd Bruce. We've been there for 27 years. I know my neighbor Teresa Mogart's been there for over 30. We've been maintaining that yard since, or that back section since day one, up to the rocks on the railroad tracks and then something. Half of our families and everybody out there have used that property, had fire pits back there, you know. Some of them split wood back there, do whatever, or there's some that have some storage, like pop-up tents sitting out there. So everybody's already kind of used it, and we've maintained it and taken care of it. Now, I know there is a few that might not be interested in it, and like he said there, I know the interest would be like if my neighbor didn't want it, I would love to buy theirs too. Now, it would create an L shape and whatnot, but where my house is, I have like, I don't know, it's almost like a weird diamond shape. There's nothing straight in my yard. Even the trees that, you know, I have a little bit of a beef with the city. That's why I have a problem now. I've been fine with there being a trail and stuff going back there all the years. I think it's great because people are walking by, walking their dogs, you know. People can ride out on their snowmobiles from the back of their houses. So I'm not opposed to there being a sidewalk. But now from the back of my property to the next person on the west of me, if they took a 50-foot easement, that would leave me 10 feet of backyard. What's the point of that, you know? And then who's gonna take care of it? They already, like I planted a bunch of trees back there with my daughter when we first moved in, when she was 3 years old. Nice, big, beautiful trees. City came along and bulldozed them all so they could put a drain in. And then 20 years ago, I made an agreement with the farmer that had the field where now they put a development in on putting up a fence. So I put up a fence and he said, yep, you put up a fence right here. I'm fine with it. You're fine with it. Now the city comes along, I was 5 feet over the property line. Now, instead of just letting me buy it from whoever that the farmer sold the development land, they would not. So they mowed all the trees down, put a drain pipe in, put this big retention pond halfway through my backyard. Now there's culverts. And then now they're trying to tax me more because now the land's worth more because now it doesn't get wet in the backyard. They're right, it doesn't. So now I have to pay for water to keep my grass green. Thanks. Point is yeah, I have a little beef with the city for whatever reasons. I don't trust them. They're in it for themselves. I'm not saying all city people are, but right now the people we have in Horace are all about themselves and all about the growth. And I know everybody we would talk to would just come around and give you all a pat on the back if you guys seen it our way and gave us the opportunity to try to purchase it first. That's about it.
Are there any questions of this witness? Hearing none, I think I saw one more hand up in the
Yeah,
back.
one guy was gonna jump and I don't know how I stood up faster, but.
Hi, my name's Lyle Zern. I am the owner with my wife on the 295 Mostway. Yep, that bigger parcel. I have interest in the railroad corridor to expand the size of my lot to a size that would accommodate a bigger secondary use building. My wife is a photographer, so she'd be able to put up a better size secondary building for her studio and her business of photography. And we'd have more area for trees, plants for her to take photography in our yard instead of spending $1,000 or more for studio space in some other buildings around town or driving a half hour into Fargo just to go spend a half hour taking or an hour taking pictures. I, for one, am interested in making sure that this goes through and am willing to buy additional property that is, if my neighbor does not want to buy theirs. I know this gets into the whole City of Horace land use code, as I'm not 100% familiar with it, but yeah. Any questions?
Are there any questions of this witness? Hearing none, thank you for your presentation. I believe I saw another hand up back here.
Hi, my name's Mark Prindeville. I live at 201 Dakota Avenue, and we've been mowing. We moved to town, Dad did in '72, and I bought the house from about 6 years ago, but we've been mowing and taking care of the ditch there for the railroad and for all this time, and we would like to have the chance to purchase it. Yeah.
Are there any questions of this witness? Mr. Gust?
Are you interested in purchasing a lot adjacent to yours in case your neighbor doesn't want to?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Are there any other questions? Are there any other people in the audience who wish to be heard today? Seeing no hands raised, we'll close this portion of the meeting. As a result of the meeting, Mr. Benson, did you have any recommendations of this committee?
Mr. Chair, committee members, so after the meeting, in our discussion with staff at the Diversion Authority, we wanted to move the recommendation to first approve it as excess lands, because that hasn't been done yet for all three of the OINs, and then to direct staff to follow our policy and to first reach out to the adjacent landowners. and then come back. So that's the main request. A couple of additional things, because there is a cost to have a fairly nominal cost to assist in the per parcel split that we would have to do with all these lots. And then obtain written confirmation of the intent to purchase the property from landowners within approximately 30 days. So we would send letters out describing to each landowner, describing the adjacent parcel, the size, the cost per foot, the total cost, and then having a letter for them to sign to send back stating that they have a desire to as a confirmation with the intent to purchase. So that way we would have the idea of better understanding of how many homeowners are interested in, if we only get 50% back versus if we get 95% back, that gives us a better idea. If we identify parties that aren't interested in purchasing their portion of the property, we would explore solutions to the sale of that property. Again, it's been brought up that some people are willing to purchase adjacent parcels. And then if all the landowner confirmations are in and we would proceed with the platting and continue to move through that process to sell that land. If we didn't, then we'd be back here with a new request, most likely to then ask for an exception to not sell it to those adjacent landowners. If there's only, say, again, 50% that wanted to purchase it, we would come back, most likely come back requesting to move ahead with selling it to the or making an offer to working with the city of Horace.
Are there any questions of Mr. Benson? Will you help our staff in detailing your recommendation?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I know it's in the we've got the much smaller recommendation, but we've got the notes for the details. So Dawn will hunt me down. She's in the office next to me.
All right. I noticed that some of the materials were copied to our attorney, Mr. Shockley. Did you have anything to add to this conversation?
No, Mr. Chair, I did not have any additional comments. Been part of the process, ongoing process as the board and the diversion authority and the executive director work through the policy decisions regarding if you want to have these sales or not.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation of our director. Is there a motion consistent with that recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt Mr. Benson's recommendation.
Is there a second to that motion?
Stamus would second.
Is there any further questions or discussion that should take place at this time? Mr. Flacco?
The one thing I would ask legal counsel is if they could, and they may have this already, I don't need it today, but look at either case law or century code, because the care that was given for the various lands, the care and maintenance of it dating back to at least 1972 may have some precedent in here. Case in point, Lucian or Edie Barnes, the land that was southwest corner of I-29 and I-94, where there was a dispute over the land, and one party had been managing what they thought was theirs, and it was actually some of the others. So I guess I would ask them to look at that as we move forward. I don't need any off the cuff today, but just to look at that to see if there is a precedence for those that have been taking care of it getting a fair crack at it.
Would Mr. Benson follow up on that request?
Yes, I'll work with counsel on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion that should take place at this time?
Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Breitling. This is Jenny Mojo.
Mojo.
Sorry, it's Jenny Mojo. I just want to thank residents for coming. I know it's sometimes an inconvenience to do so, but I really appreciate the members of the public for coming today. It's really important for us to share their perspective. And I think it's also really important to note that the points they brought up are points that Commissioner Charlene from Cass County really brought up, that there is so many different components of the public, and this is really a unique piece of property, so I appreciate their time today.
Thank you. This requires a roll call vote. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Plackel?
Aye.
Mr. Stamnes?
Yes.
Ms. Derrick?
Yes.
Mr. Borboom?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Gust?
Yes.
Mr. Breitling?
Yes.
Ms. Majo?
Yes.
Ms. Sternberg?
Yes.
And Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before this committee at this time?
Mr. Chair, I've got one item.
Yes.
All right, thank you. This is just an informational item. Several years ago, we sold a parcel to Larry Richard using the RIMP loan mortgage process. And he purchased 2 parcels south of the St. Benedict area, fairly close to the Wild Rice River structure. And since then, he's developed it for his agricultural purposes. He was just several miles to the west inside the staging area where his farmstead was, so he's moved to his farm operation here. He's invested a lot of money into the south half of that parcel by building his agricultural facilities. And he's requested that we do a partial mortgage release for the northern part, so that because his son is taking over the farm, so that they can start the process to sell that north part of that parcel, so his son can start developing it for the kind of the residential farmstead portion. And so again, there's no action, but I just wanted to, I'll be taking that action as part of my duties as executive director, but I wanted to keep this group informed that we would be, that we're moving towards doing that partial request. I don't think there's any risk in that RIMP loan and mortgage process, again, because of the amount of money that he's already invested in that south half of the parcel to build all of the agricultural facilities.
It would be more than sufficient to cover any, the value of the remaining portion.
Yes.
Would be large enough to cover all the mortgage.
Yes, very, very good, yes.
Thank you, and that there's no
Nothing
action
else.
that this board needs to take.
No action at all, no.
Thank you. Is there any other business that should come before this group at this time? Well, we were able to get through before the finance committee meets. So, and I had reservations about that happening. The chair will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.